Hello and welcome to this video. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed this innocuous looking speaker cabinet that has been in the back of some of my videos for the last few weeks or so. This amp has a history which I would love to explore on this video today for you. This amp's quite a special amp. How has it ended up in my possession? Well, it's not technically in my possession. This amp belongs to a guitarist called Kevin Gammond, who played with all sorts of people from the mid-60s on. Acquired this amp, I think, around about 1970-71. We're going to get into the history in a minute. And has stayed with him for the last 50-odd years, and now he has found a little home for it here in my studio. Where do we start with this? How do we pull this story together? Well, I think the best way to do it is in a very occasional series that I sometimes do called Musical Connections. And that's where we take something and we connect one thing to the other. Now, I'm going to be starting with the connection of me to this cabinet. And it starts here. I am sat outside a quiet wintry school in the West Midlands here in the United Kingdom. 33 years ago, I pulled up outside this school because I'd been booked to drum in a musical that had been written by a guy called David Gault-Roger. David Gault-Roger was a classical musician, but he had been taken on at the local college, and he'd had the brilliant idea of taking the theatre course, the acting course there, and adapted it for rock bands. In doing so, he brought in a whole bunch of local but legendary musicians who had worked with some of the biggest acts in the world as advisors and teachers. One of those musicians he brought in was Mr. Kevin Gammond, of which you will hear a lot in this video. But I knew none of this. I had been booked to play this. I was getting around about 100 quid, I think, for 2 days' work, which was great. I just started my professional career as a drummer, so it was nice to have a gig. I'd rather been out doing some proper touring, but I had this little gig in a little school, and it was work and it was money. I didn't think much of it at all. That evening, as I went over to do the first gig, I parked up, put my gear in the car, and as I opened my car door, to manoeuvre some gear in the back, a car came along and crunched the door. Didn't quite take it off, but basically mangled the car door, and I knew I'd need to get a new car door. So I sort of gaffer taped the door back on and very grumpily drove over to this gig, knowing that whatever money I was going to make was going to get completely taken up on paying for a door for my car, which I'd used to drive to the gig. And this always annoyed me. When you do a gig and the expenses of the gig are the same or more than the profits of the gig, making the gig financially pointless, it's always a bit depressing. But little did I know that I was about to have one of the most interesting meetings, or almost meetings, because as I did a gig, some of the other musicians said, Kevin Gammond's coming to see this gig. Now, I knew who Kevin Gammond was because he had been in a band called Pictures in the Dark Room, and this was a very avant-garde, way out band that was almost legendary in my town for putting on really strange gigs. Kev had done, he'd done gigs on the back of elephants. He'd encased his guitar in a block of ice and hacked it with a saw while it was hooked up to an amp. He used to do guitar solos by putting little clockwork birds, having them scampering up and down. Kevin was a legend, and so I was very excited about meeting him, but he didn't turn up. My friend who knew him said that I'd really want to meet him, so a meeting was organised a couple of days later, and when I met Kevin, we just joined forces at that moment. Kevin got me a job teaching in the local college, and I started to learn about Kevin's illustrious career, which we're going to explore on this video, but also we're going to relate it back to that incredible cabinet, speaker cabinet that you saw at the beginning of this video. But that's where I start. And the thing is that meeting Kevin would not only get me into education, but it would also lead me to playing with Robert Plant for a number of years as well, alongside Kev. And on stage, Kevin would be playing through that cabinet. But the history of that cabinet is far more involved than that. So let's go on a journey and see if that cabinet could speak. Perhaps these are the stories that this cabinet would tell us. So who is Kevin Gammond? Kevin Gammond was born just after the war, grew up in the same town as me, and discovered the wonders of Elvis Presley and Scotty Moore and Little Richard and Chuck Berry, as many people of his generation did. Kevin wanted to be involved in this and started playing guitar and got involved in the local music scene in my town by the late 50s, early 60s. But that wasn't enough for him. And so he answered an audition at a very young age, 16, 17 years old. He answers an audition for the great Jimmy Cliff, and he joins Jimmy Cliff in the mid 60s, and he finds himself in London surrounded by the likes of the Rolling Stones and Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton at the time when rock music is absolutely forming. This is a very interesting time for Kevin. He has a lot of adventures at this point. At one point he sells his I think he had a Gretsch hollow body guitar, I'm not too sure. You'll be seeing a photograph of it now. At that time, which he sold to Keith Richards. And because you could get a decent overdrive sound out of that guitar, Keith Richards then went on to write the tune, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. So Kevin was right in the middle of this burgeoning rock scene. All these young guys that are out there playing and having a laugh and having fun are going to become the legends of that time. Two local guys that are going to go on to form quite a well-known band called Led Zeppelin, and John Bonham and Robert Plant. And Kevin is teenage friends with these guys, and he forms a band in the late 60s called the Band of Joy. The Band of Joy went on to become quite a renowned band in the UK. They went to London, recorded some singles, but never got the deal. After lots sort of arguments and argy-bargies that you get in band, the band split up, and John Bonham and Kevin went over to play with Tim Rose. Now, Tim Rose had an album out in the late 60s, very influential, where he did a recording of Hey Joe. Hendrix was into that recording. And so that had sort of been the launch pad for this sort of folk rock distorted guitar crossover thing that was going on at the time. Quite famously, when Robert Plant was headhunted by Peter Grant to join Led Zeppelin, he suggested John Bonham, but John Bonham was playing with Tim Rose, with Kev at that time, and they were going up and down the country, and he was on a reasonable wage. He didn't want to leave. In the end, he was lured out of that band. Whilst touring with that group, I believe, they did do some gigs with Jimi Hendrix, and Kevin became friendly with Jimi Hendrix, and they used to sit backstage and jam together and swap ideas. So Kevin, coming from my local town, was a little bit of a legend, you see. With the dissolution of the Band of Joy, Kevin then goes on to form a band called Bronco.
Then one day when we're alone, have a little moonshine of our own. Tell you how I'm empty when you're away, but I'm sure you know it all the same. You know how I feel.
And Bronco signed to Island Records in the early 70s. At that point, he needs a cabinet for his guitar, and that's where this thing comes in. This band that he formed, Bronco, went on to record, I think, 3 albums at that time. It featured Jess Roden, it featured Robbie Blunt, and a whole host of other players. And I'm not going to explain that history. I am going to interview Peter Robinson, who's an old mate of mine, but also was the drummer in Bronco at this time. But to fill in how this cabinet comes in the early 70s, this was given to Bronco by the Who's roadie, a man called Dick Hayes. He is also roadieing on the early Bronco gigs. Kevin Gammond has penned some notes for me here, and I'm trying to go through these notes to give you the specifics of these amps, but I'm afraid I'm finding his handwriting quite difficult to go through, and this is like the third take now, so I thought I'd just take the bull by the horns and try and get through these notes that Kevin gave me. This amp, as we have said, had been in the possession of Pete Townsend. Now, of course, through this period of 65 to 70, Pete Townsend was famous for smashing up his equipment, but not so much his cabinets. You know, the thing people don't realise about Pete Townsend is that he spent as much time trying to put the guitars back together as he did smashing them up. So I think he knew not to smash this beauty up. And this was basically with The Who for a number of years. And the thing is, we will never know who played through this, if you excuse the pun. We will never know who guested with this. We will never know. I mean, this cabinet here, this well could have been played through by Jimi Hendrix or any of those artists that were working in London at the same time. It doesn't take much of the imagination to imagine the Who's doing a gig and some musician like Hendrix or Jeff Beck turns up and plugs in and plays through this. We have no real idea who played through this cabinet, what music came out of this, what reverberated through the wood of this cab. It's quite incredible. And at some point, Dick Hayes gives this to Kevin Gammond. Bronco then go out on tour in the UK, in Europe and America, and this cabinet goes with them. This includes doing supports for Led Zeppelin at the Empire Pool Wembley Arena in 1971. Now, in 1976, and I find this very interesting, Robert Plant and John Bonham planned to rejoin the Band of Joy for a benefit gig. All right. Now, what was this benefit gig about? Now, this is where I come in here, because very early on, I can remember watching the news and I heard about this Birmingham band. It was a trio, and this band had basically had a car crash and the whole band had sort of been killed. And I remember this very distinctly. I can remember this happening, and for the whole of my life I've never known who this band was. Go through the history of this album and uncovering this from Melody Maker here, all right, which we'll now put on the screen. It says this: Led Zeppelin's Robert Plant and John Bonham are rejoining their old group Band of Joy next month for 3 special shows. The band, who built up a strong reputation in the Midlands during the late 60s, have reformed, and their first 3 concerts with Plant and Bonham as guest artists will be benefit shows for the relatives of The Possessed. This was the band. Now, The Possessed brought an album out in 1971. It's up on the screen now. And I've been listening to this album, and it's a very interesting mix of progressive rock, hard rock, psychedelic rock, and soul vocal influences, with some really interesting playing on here. So this will benefit the shows for the relatives of The Possessed, the Birmingham bass band killed in a motorway crash last month. None of these dates have yet been set, but 2 of the shows will be at Birmingham's Barbarella and Wolverhampton Civic Hall at the end of January. Both Plant and Bonham were members of the group immediately before joining Led Zeppelin. The new Band of Joy, featuring Kevin Gammond on lead guitar, Paul Lockey on it says vocals, both bass, and Chris Barron on keyboards, were all original members, together with the ex-Bronco bass player Johnny Pasternak and drummer Francesco Nizza, who has played with Vangelis. Now, I know that Kevin spent some time in Italy, and he actually jammed with those players surrounding Aphrodite's Child and Vangelis. So this is the point when he was playing with Jimmy Witherspoon. I have known Kevin, as I've said, for 30 years. He's actually one of my best friends and a mentor. I have decided that Kevin will not feature in my YouTube. He's too close to me. It's too easy. He may feature one day. So I could sit down with Kevin and try and work out this history of Bronco and how this cabinet fits in. But I thought it'd be more interesting to go to another friend of mine, a guy called Peter Robinson, and interview him to get the full story on Bronco and this amp, because Peter also had connections with Band of Joy and to all these different musicians that were coming together in Birmingham at that time. Good afternoon, Pete. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing fine, Andy. How are you?
I'm all right.
Good.
So we've known each other for quite a while, ever since I sold my yellow van to you.
Yes, that's
probably
right,
about
yeah.
25 years ago, would you say?
And then I rode it and drove you into a tree, didn't I?
You did, yes. So if anybody wants to know how I know Pete, I actually taught when I was a nipper.
Yeah.
And your lad Dimitri was even more of a nipper. I taught your son.
That's right. Yeah, you did. Yeah,
And that's how I first came across Pete. And I didn't really realise at that time your pedigree as a drummer in all these bands.
Yeah, so, I've been around quite a long time. Quite a few years, yeah.
So when did you start playing drums?
Oh gosh, when I was little, I was in the boys' brigade. You know, Sunday morning, big brass thing strapped to your leg, battering away up and down the high street.
Which high street was this?
West Bromwich.
Oh, so this is Robert Plant land, isn't it?
Yeah. So in West Brom, and then that ended. You know, things moved on, and then my dad bought me this drum kit, and I wish I still got it. But it was one of those old-fashioned, about a 26-inch bass with the skulls on, and I'm sure this snare was an old Ludwig snare, like a
1930s.
Yeah, 1930s thing. But I don't know. I had that for a little while and it disappeared.
So what drummers were you listening to? What was the music that you were into?
Then, well, obviously Beatles, Stones, and then I was into a lot of soul music then. So the drummers I'd be listening to would be I don't know, the guy with Booker T.
Al Jackson.
Al Jackson, yeah, he was great, fantastic drummer. Yeah, people like that.
A lot of those rock drummers that came through and sort of created rock drumming.
Yeah.
Were either listening to big band drummers or those soul drummers, weren't they?
Yeah,
There's nothing to make rock drumming out of, is there? Really?
No, well, I mean, a big band was completely off my radar. I had nothing to do with big band. So it was pop, and then soul came in, and sort of soul was the thing that sort of...
And what was your first band?
My first band was a band called the Shooting Stars. They were a band from Great Bar. I was with them for quite a while, a few years. I was about, I don't know, 14, 15, something like that.
And was there any notable musicians apart from Robert? Did you ever come across Robert when you were young? Was he around? Because he went to school in Stourbridge, I believe.
Yeah, I didn't know Robert at all until a friend of mine who got killed, a guy named Mickey Reeves, who was in a band called Possessed. He came to my door and he said, "Oh, hello, mate." Come in. He said, "This is my friend Robert. He's a singer." And that's how I got to know Robert.
Mick Reeves.
Mickey Reeves, yeah.
Mickey Reeves.
Yeah.
Right, so as I mentioned on the video earlier, and here it is presented to me, when I was a very young lad in 76, I can remember watching Midlands Today, which was our local news programme, and they said this whole band had been killed.
That's right, yeah.
And I never knew who this band was. It was only when I started to research into this that I read about the Possessed. I heard their first album, which is an incredible album.
Yeah.
Who were the guys in it? So it was Mick Reeves. He went on to play with Al Atkins, didn't he? Did he play with Al Atkins, who was the original singer with Priest?
No, because Mick got killed because they had a crash. There was three of them that got killed.
All three of them were killed in 76, weren't they?
So there was Mickey Reeves, a guy named Vernon Pereira, who was with me in the very first Band of Joy, and another guy, unfortunately I can't remember his name, but...
So Vernon Pereira, who was in the Possessed, because this all actually links in, because if you see, I've unearthed this bit of Melody Maker there, which is the news report of the Possessed, you know, back in 76, having that terrible accident, and then the reformed Band of Joy and Zeppelin coming in to sort of raise money for it, you know, of which this cabinet was used in those shows, apparently.
That's right, yeah.
Anyway, so that's very interesting. So what was the original Band of Joy? What was the lineup for that?
The original lineup was Robert on vocals, a guy named Chris Brown, who was in one of the later Bandajoys, on keys, Vernon Pereira on guitar, Lyndon Laney.
Really?
Lyndon Laney on bass.
This is Lyndon Laney, who is the guy behind the amps.
Laney,
yeah.
Laney amps. And myself on drums. And that was the first incarnation of the band. And then there was the infamous story that I was supposed to have sacked Robert. I never sacked Robert.
Oh, come on, let people...
Well,
for the video, I can put that on the thumbnail.
I know. Anyway, Robert got sacked.
Who did sack him then?
Well, we always thought it was... Everybody blamed me, but I think it was a guy named Dennis Ashfield who was our roadie at the time.
Really?
Well, we think so, yeah. I've had conflicting stories, but I still get blamed for it.
What did he do, Robert, to get sacked?
He wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't carry any of the gear. He used to just turn up with his entourage.
In other words...
I may be wrong, Robert, if you're watching this.
Yeah, well, the thing is, isn't that every lead singer?
Well, that's it. Yeah,
You know, I brought my mic in.
Yeah.
I brought my sandwiches in.
That's it.
And I carried a music stand in for someone. They do always do one thing, don't they? They'll carry, like, say, but it'll always be little, like a guitar stand or something, and plonk it on the stage.
So I've done my bit, yeah. But that's lead singers, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't have a go for Robert for that.
No. But we were only kids. We were just kids, just stepping out into the big musical world, sort of thing. So
he got sacked for not pulling his weight.
Yeah,
everyone else's weight.
He went, and then we got a guy named Paul Lockie, who was with me in the Shooting Stars, and then he was in a further Band of Joy with Kevin, Robert and Johnny Bonham.
Yeah.
That incarnation of the Band of Joy, further up the line.
So how did Kevin and John Bonham come into the band? Did they come in at the same time?
Well, Kevin came in later, and Bonham came in through Robert, I think, because they were mates.
Yeah.
Him and Johnny Bonham. They were mates, so... That's how that. I think that's how that. I mean, it's a bit vague. It's like.
Pete's been saying to me that his memory's not great.
No.
But I quite enjoy the fact that his memory's not great. I think it's quite funny because I've got all the facts and figures in my head.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's got the actual raw experience. So I'm interested. Did you know John Bonham at this time?
I knew him a little bit. Yeah, we used to years ago. There used to be this cafe in West Brom called the Casa Bamboo, quite an infamous local cafe, where everybody used to meet everybody, because you turn up there. And Robert and Johnny Bonham used to come in. I used to chat to Johnny Bonham, and I think I lent him. I had a Ludwig Speaking pedal, and I lent him one because he was doing a gig, and I think his pedal had gone.
Did he give it back?
I never saw it again. Disappeared. Probably in America or something. Anyway, so I knew him a little bit. Yeah, he was a nice bloke. He was,
Was he?
Yeah, it seemed all right. I mean,
and did you ever go and see him drumming in the other bands?
I saw him in Way of Life.
Yeah.
At a local gig called the Hen and Chickens in.
Oh, I remember that.
On the Wolverhampton Road.
Yeah.
And he was so loud.
Was he loud?
He was loud, but not ridiculously loud. I mean, it was just.
The thing is with drummers then, they didn't actually play that loud. There's a whole bunch of reasons. The gear couldn't take it.
Well, that's
the
right.
Drum heads couldn't take it because they were like pigskin or whatever it was made out of, And to fit in with the, if you're playing in pianos in pubs, my dad was a drummer in the 50s, and of course it was all acoustic, so you had to play quiet.
Yeah.
And so everyone goes on about how loud Bonham is, but when I watch him play, I'm thinking, by today's standards, he'd be quiet. I think it was more he had the bigger drums, didn't he?
I think he had the bigger drums, and as you say, the equipment, it was probably a little AC 30 amps. So the equipment was smaller and not pushing out as much as it,
And be honest here, what was it about him that was so great? Was he jaw dropping, or was he just a good drummer on the circuit?
Well, he was just to me, he was just a good drummer on the circuit.
Yeah.
Because I think I'd seen him as well, thinking now, he was in a band called Way of Life way back.
Yeah.
And I saw them. But he was a good drummer on the circuit. And then I when I left the band, I went out with him a couple of times when Johnny was playing with Robert in the Band of Joy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I never thought he was as what he was. How he's revered now.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I never saw that. Maybe maybe I wasn't looking. Or...
Well, Kevin told me him and John then went on to join Tim Rhodes's band, and that was the band that John Bonham was in when Peter Grant says, "Do you want the gig?" And he went, "No, I'm on 50 quid a week." But Kev told me that they were touring with Hendrix at the time, and that he would sit backstage with Hendrix and have a bit of a jam with him. And he said the same thing. He said he wasn't jaw-dropping. It was more the fact he was into great music and there was a passion there.
Yeah.
And it's funny how time has turned these people
into what they are.
But for you, it's like you in your early 20s, all these guys in their early, everyone forgets this. They're just kids, aren't they?
Everyone's right, yeah. I mean, I was probably more into Mitch Mitchell. I liked Mitch Mitchell because he was a jazz player playing with a rock band.
Yeah.
And I loved him with Hendrix because he was free. He was
Mitch.
But I mean, say we Johnny. I mean, I would love to have seen John Bonham with Tim Rose because Tim Rose was back. I think he was basically like an acoustic.
Yeah, that's right.
Guy,
yeah.
You know, so I would love to have seen how he adapted to that.
There was a famous row between Kevin and John Bonham at some point, and I think they pulled the van over and he got out on the M1 or something and walked off into, I don't know. If you want to know why Kev's not on this, he's texted me this morning and he's not very well, is he? And Pete hasn't seen Kev for a while. I was hoping to get you together and have a bit of
Kev's really not in the best of health at the moment, so
but he is a
send
legend,
him our wishes. And
that man is a legend, isn't he?
Oh God, Kevin's he's definitely a legend. Well, he's a legend round here anyway.
So, can you tell us a little bit about Bronco and how that formed and the story of that?
I think, as far as I know, I was working just a normal job, and Kevin got in touch with me and says we're forming this band with a guy named Jez Roden, and he's got a deal with Island Records. I said, oh, okay. So I went over to, I think it was Johnny Pasternak's mum's.
And Johnny Pasternak was the bass player.
Johnny Pasternak was our bass player. And I think I went to his mum's and we had a bit of a meeting and a bit of a yap and whatever. And then, if memory serves me well, I think we started rehearsing at the Village Hall in just by the Bellman's pub just around the corner.
Oh, I know the one. Yes.
The Bellman's Cross is just a little. And we used to rehearse there, and so it went from there. Robbie got recruited, but they were all kidding me. So I was the odd one out because I came from from West Bromway, so I was the foreigner. They were all kiddie guys,
And when did Robbie Blunt come in?
He came in from the beginning.
So he had Robbie Blunt, and of course, those who know the history of Robert, he was also the guitarist of the first few albums.
Yeah.
All great, incredible players.
Oh, brilliant! I mean, but the thing is, they all play together because they all lived here in Kidderminster. They all had played in various little bands together. Well, I don't know about Robbie, but I think they did.
Yeah.
I know Johnny and Kev did and things like that. But they were great players. Yeah, all great.
Can you tell them a little bit about Jez Roden as a singer? Because he's a very special singer, isn't he? One of the country's great singers. You've got all the famous Robert Plants and, dare I say, David Coverdales and Ian Gillans and Paul Rogers, but we've also got all these other singers that were like James Dewar, who was singing with Robin Trow, incredible singer. Jez Roden, Terry Reid, and Jez is an incredible singer, isn't he?
Oh, Jez he was so underrated.
I can turn back the hands of time, yes I can. Oh, I can make the season change just by waving my hand. I can turn a thing that's old to new.
he was, well, he's just a great. I mean, I first heard him with the Alan Bown set when he was singing with Alan Bown, doing the soul stuff, and then we got this band together. But he is a fantastic singer, so underrated, and he's tried so hard. He went solo after the Bronco split, but he never quite.
Made some great albums.
Yeah, he made brilliant albums.
And those albums were well received. I think they sold okay. He was an artist around the thing, but like you said, he never had that hit record. Whereas another singer from my town, Kidderminster here, Clifford T. Ward, did you ever play with him?
Yeah, but I didn't play with him, but he used to come to Bronco sessions.
Yeah,
and he wrote a couple of songs for Kev, and So I think we did a single of his Cliff Ward one of his singles. Yes, I knew Cliff. He was nice bloke, great bloke, but I never actually physically.
No, he never actually played
with him. No.
So this is the point in 1971 that. Do you remember why Kev got this? Why the roadie, who is your roadie and was the roadie for The Who, gave Kev this or sold Kev this cabinet?
Well,
do you remember it at all? Does it look familiar?
It looks familiar.
Because you talk about John Bonham not being that loud, but Kev, he was always very loud.
Kev was a very extremely loud person, and I don't know if they were HiWatt.
The HiWatt, yeah.
They were HiWatt, yeah, but because Jez used to know a couple of guys who used to be roadie for The Who.
That's it.
And there was a guy named Ben Pridden who used to do the sound for The Who, or the onstage sound. So when The Who weren't working, we used to borrow some of their stuff. I mean, I remember having Mooney's. I've got a picture of it somewhere. Gong.
Really?
Yeah, I used to use.
That's incredible. You've had a bloody life.
Yeah, and he used to get me loads of his drumsticks. But then I really.
So you knew him?
I didn't know Mooney. I met him.
What was he like when you met him?
He was very strange. Very strange. Very drunk. We were playing the Lyceum, if I remember, and he came in with some lady on his arm. He was, hello, my boy.
Rick Beato's just done an interview with Ken Scott, who was the Beatles producer engineer, and he also produced and engineered the Jeff Beck group. And Mooney had come down Abbey Road to do a session, and he said that Keith Moon had built into his Rolls Royce a PA, so he could talk to people outside at high volume. And he said
I wouldn't be surprised.
He's trying to come out of Abbey Road car park, and he said this old lady walking a dog, and she's taking her time, and he goes, "Get out of here, everywhere!" She jumps out of her skin.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
The thing is that it's kids, isn't it? It's young people having a laugh, isn't it? And, and that's all it is. It's hijinks. We'd all do it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I blow up a toilet though.
No. I think he just took it a bit too far, didn't he? Yeah.
So, is there any memorable gigs from that time? I mean, what about the Led Zeppelin connection? Did you do any dates with them?
We did Empire Pool Wembley, I think it was.
Right, You're right, Pete. I've got it down.
Oh, you've got it down, I think. Yeah. Well,
and what was that gig like?
The grey matter's working. Empire Pool Wembley. And I remember about that. The only thing I remember about that is Bonzo had got a teddy boy suit on and he got a big crepe. I thought he was going to play in those big crepe salt shoes, you know what I mean? But
and apparently, everybody, that was used on that gig.
Yeah.
And Pagey played through it on that gig as well.
Well, I never finished off about the thing.
No, yeah.
But I say we these people from the Who. I say we used to borrow the stuff.
Any other notable gigs you remember? Did you get to the States? We
went to the States for a month or so. That was really good. We did quite a few places over there, San Francisco and Huntington Beach and all these places. It was great.
Who were you playing with?
If I remember rightly, and I'm not sure on this if this is right, but I think we went over there. And then we were supposed to join. We did our little bit, and then we were supposed to join the Traffic, and they were touring all over. We were supposed to join the Traffic package, and as far as I remember, I think they split, So that put the kibosh on that.
Yeah.
So then we just had to come back home. I can't say the validity. All that's right. But
Everybody. I mean, the thing is that when you get into this scene, and I'm younger than you, but when I met Kevin and then met you, and then you start to unearth this Birmingham scene, which is huge. So many musicians.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And there's so many great musicians that worked well known. Obviously, with Traffic, Dave Mason was the Birmingham guy, wasn't
That's
he?
right,
You
yeah.
know, and Steve Winwood as also he's another guy that was around. That
Well,
you
Steve
know,
Winwood and his brother Muff.
yeah.
Muff used to manage Bronco at one. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's funny that when you chat to people, there's all these little bits where it just didn't quite come together. And if Bronco, which is a great band, I suggest you check the albums out. Incredible band, sort of folk rock, but quite experimental in places.
Yeah.
Very melodic. The
Great vocals, by the way.
yeah, Jesse's incredible. The Pete's amazing on it. Great drummer. I've seen Pete play live. You're still playing now, aren't you?
Yeah. Still having to go at it.
Yeah. An interesting guitar between Kevin and Robbie, two different styles. They
Oh
work-
gosh, yeah, completely opposite one another, but they blended together. Strangely. It was,
So what happened with Bronco in the end? Why did it?
well, when we came back, as I say, we came back from the States and we hobbled on for a bit, and then Jess decided he wanted to leave and pursue a solo career. And then we got a succession of singers in. We had a guy named Ronnie Tate who was a singer. He came and went, and then we had another guy, Dan Phone, and he was a local guy, and he lives in Ireland now. But we had him, and in the end, it just sort of disintegrated. The interest had gone, I think, and music was moving away from what.
Didn't Jess then go on to join that? Well, basically replaced Jim Morrison in the
The
Doors,
Butts Band.
in the Butts Band.
Yeah.
So that everyone must have thought this is.
Well,
gonna be
in
the biggest
America, they must have gone. They didn't realise it was the Butts in Kidderminster. As I believe. It
Is it?
Well, there's the Butts Ring Road.
Pop
isn't
Butts,
there?
yeah. That's the Butts Band.
I don't know. I think so.
This is amazing stuff. This is from people.
I think. Oh,
So the Butts Band, which was like the reincarnation of the Doors with that Jim Morrison, is named after a tiny area in a road in my hometown.
yeah. Well, as far as I know, but you'll have to check that out with Jez because he might come up with it.
You know what Robert told
Jez.
me? You know in Queen's Head, up in Wolverley.
Yeah.
In the old days, the only way you can get into that pub if you're going into the bar is you have to go in through the outdoor.
And is that where that
the
came
name
from?
of that, and I wonder how many of the, especially if you get to the Black Country, how many rock things go back to.
It's surprising, isn't it? Yeah. But that, as I say, the Butts thing, as far as I know, that's what it came from. But I wouldn't.
Even if it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I love it. So knowing your lad Dimitri, he must have been born around about 76, I imagine. Is that what happened with you? Did you?
Well, we got married and then eventually Dem came along, and so I went into Mr. Normal and went and just got a job as normal and completely put playing behind me for a few years. But like most things, it's like a disease. It creeps back in. So then I had to buy me another kit of drums and try and find a band,
So that cabinet there has played a role in all of our lives.
Oh, it has, yeah.
And it sits there quietly. It's a very interesting thing. So
if that could talk, that would tell many a tale. But that's definitely the cab.
That's definitely the cab.
I vouch for that.
Lovely, Pete. It's been lovely to see you again.
It's been great to see you, Andy, and it's been lovely to try and record.
And when Kev's a bit better, you know where I am now. You can always pop down. I would like to thank Mr. Peter Robinson in coming in and filling in the gaps in terms of Bronco and Band of Joy and all that stuff. Lovely.
Thank you, Andy.
Cheers,
Thank
matey.
you. Great.
That's lovely.
Take care.
We done, mate? That's it. So, this cabinet has stenciled on the back the name Band of Joy. This is not from the period of Band of Joy pre-Led Zeppelin. It is from the period when Kevin was playing in Bronco. And comes from the time when they were reforming at that point. I think around about 1977, 78, Band of Joy reformed properly and did another album with a reasonable major label deal, I believe. But of course, it never went anywhere. And Kevin then decamped, I think, off to Holland to work with Louis Andriessen in his group Okatus. In the mid-1980s, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page headlined another benefit gig with local musicians at the Stourport Civic Centre. Jimmy Page used this cabinet on stage. All right. This has been played through by Jimmy Page as well. So the roster of guitarists that have played through this cabinet is quite shocking. Once it came into Robert's possession in the early 90s, this was then taken on by Robert and went out on tour with him. This would have been the Fate of Nations tour. The HiWatt Fane speakers were updated to Marshall G12. The vintage speakers were kept and are still available, but this now contains those G12 speakers. Also, Robert Plant created or had built a flight case for this cabinet that had his logo at that time on. And that is also, if you've been very eagle-eyed, been in my possession for the past few weeks, and you can see it in the background of a lot of the videos I've been doing. After the Manic Nirvana tour, Robert Plant then teamed up with his old mate from Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, and they did the famous Unleaded TV show for MTV, which then turned into an album called No Quarter. And then they reformed as Page and Plant, and they toured up until around about 1998, if I'm correct in my thinking. In 1997, Robert was asked by a local tennis club if he could do a little gig just to raise some money or for charity, celebrate the tennis club. It was a little local event. And so he went to his friend Kevin Gammond and said, "Do you want to do this with me?" And as I said, I had become friends with Kevin at that point. And so Kevin approached me and he said, "Would you like to play drums? And do you know any other musicians?" I had a jazz trio at the time, which featured a keyboardist called Paul Timothy, who is now known as Timmy Vegas, and he has various other pseudonyms. This is where the connections start to get very strange. And my friend Paul Wetton, who came in as guitarist, but he came in on bass. And so that quartet became what is known as the Priory of Brian. And I stayed with Robert playing drums from 97, didn't do anything in 98. And then late 98, early 99, we really started to do a lot of gigs. And I ended up doing over 100 gigs touring all around Europe with Robert.
Shackles. You can come and look if you want to. In the halls you'll see no mantles, but the light shines dim all around you. The streets are paved with gold. If someone asks, you can call my name. 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 Oh yeah.
Now, on all of those gigs, and there's so many memorable gigs, on all of those gigs, or a great lot of them, maybe not some of the European gigs where we had a backline hired. But on many of these gigs, we had this flight case and Kevin was playing through this cabinet. On the final gig, I remember, which happened at Wolfern Hall in Wolverhampton, very apt as we have on this flight case Robert Plant's symbol, which is, I mean, it's very phallic, but it's also a wolf. And a wolf isn't just the symbol of his local football club, but is actually like the sort of spirit animal for the Wolverhampton area. And there is so many what's the name when something's wolfish? Is it Sylvine? I don't know. Anyway, whatever that word is, this has ramifications for me. That symbol has ramifications for me in terms of the local history that goes back sort of pre-Norman into the hinterlands of North Wales, which of course the Priory of Brian had been formed originally to go and do little gigs in those hinterlands. Robert being a huge fan and great knowledge of Welsh early history. Paul Timothy, the keyboardist in the Priory of Brian, had actually worked under the pseudonym Owen Glyndwr, the Welsh King. We all had pseudonyms in this band. If you want to know more about my time in Priory of Brian, there's a whole ton of videos here, but also the greatest YouTuber on Led Zeppelin, which is a guy called JCM, interviewed me and did a documentary on the Priory of Brian, and it's way better than anything I could do. And so go and check that if you want to know more about it. Some more interesting connections from that period of time. I can remember doing a gig in Oxford where Kev was using this cabinet, and we had a guest turn up who was Tim Rose, that guy that Kevin had been touring with John Bonham back in 1968, when Led Zeppelin first got formed. And I got to play on stage and play the tune Morning Dew, Tim Rose, one of Tim Rose's, very memorable tunes, with Tim Rose. And I believe Tim Rose also played through this cabinet. He plugged his guitar into something, and I assume it could have been, this is the thing, we never know. We never know. Kevin has memories of when he was in Bronco doing gigs with T-Rex, and Mark Bolan would get on stage and play with them. So it's highly likely Mark Bolan also played through this cabinet here. On the Priory of Brian's last gig, which happened in December 2000, I remember Robert decided to pull out a guitar and do a pretty reasonable guitar solo, which was captured on video. It's here. And that video is a video of Robert Plant also playing through this cabinet. This cabinet has been connected to so many events running through the history of rock and roll here in the United Kingdom. And it's an interesting thing as I get older. You know, as you've seen, I've had the desire to sort of hold it, sit next to it, and touch it. And although I've tried to get as many connections and facts into this cabinet, it's much more about that feeling. And the feeling, as it's now a little bit tatty and a little bit old, that it symbolises the passing of an era into history. The people who played through this cabinet are now approaching 80, or they've gone and they're no longer with us. This is a piece of history. Kevin Gammond has held on to this amp for 55 years. He has now come to the decision that it would be great to let it pass on to someone else. So this cabinet is for sale, and it will come with this flight case. The link to purchase this will be in the description of this video. This is a piece of rock and roll history here, and it needs to go to a good home, I think. And so if you're interested, click on the link or get in touch or email me and we'll sort this out. This is not a simple purchase. I have some more handwritten notes from Kevin describing the lineage of this cabinet. There it is. So you could do a screen grab of that, but I will go through it. This HiWatt guitar cab, which originally belonged to Pete Townsend from The Who, cabinet is a 4x12, it's an AP type, model number SC4122, serial number 5099, P21 on the top of the cab, also RP flight case, so Robert Plant flight case. This is all part of this collection here. I started out this video, sat outside a local school to me, telling you about a gig that I'd done there 33 years ago. If I had not have done that gig, even though I lost money on it and it seemed like a bit of a disaster at the time, and was pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things for me at that time. But if I hadn't have done that gig, I wouldn't have met Kevin Gammond. If I hadn't have met Kevin Gammond, I don't think I would have become a music teacher, which meant I would not have had a career in music, because teaching music allowed me to focus on music 100%. I would not have played with Robert Plant. I would not have met my wife or had my kids, and you would not be watching this YouTube video if I hadn't taken that gig. Those sorts of events are the things that music history is built upon. And it's interesting, or at least I find it interesting, to go exploring down the nooks and crannies of these events and pull out these little stories. It's those stories, I believe, that the music comes out of. So I just thought I'd add that little bit on the end, being quite a personal video for me. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. I thought I'd add this little bit on the end. When I made this video, I thought I might need a little bit of incidental music. So I jumped on the computer here, started pulling some ideas together, and I wrote this track especially for this video, and I do really like it. And so I thought I'd present the full track at the end of the video for you to have a listen to, if you've got this far. It features a couple of samples. There's a sample I've taken from this album. This is the Master Musicians of Jajuka, produced by Bill Laswell. I believe I sampled track 6 on here. And I will tell you the title of that track if I can find the track titles on here. So that was called The Middle of the Night. Okay, so there's a sample from there. I hope that YouTube don't flag it because of that sample, you never know. And then there's also a sample from this album as well, which is by Hillel and Aviva, Night on the Desert. This album came out in, when would it be? Doesn't say, can't see. I imagine late 60s, maybe early 70s. Looks like late 60s to me. And this one I bought entirely because of the cover. It was in a second-hand shop for a very small amount. And I bought it for the cover. I thought, well, I'll have a listen to it. And it's very interesting because all these songs on here are basically her singing, that drum and that flute. They're very sparse. And so that sort of beautiful vocal melody that comes across on this is actually that lady there singing. And isn't that a beautiful colour? Aren't the colours lovely there? So this is the track I did, especially for this video. I'll accompany some footage from, you know, the amp and the carbon. I took some film out in the foresty bit next to my studio, and I'll add some of that in. And it's an indulgence that I can play my music to an audience like this. That's all us musicians want. So it's got no title. I might call it HiWatt. I might call it The Midnight Dance of the HiWatt Cabinet. There we go. There's a title for it. I will stick it over on my Bandcamp. If you become a subscriber over there, you'll be able to jump into a whole ton of albums, and that one will be over there on an album called Follow Your Heart. I'll put the track up there as well. So thank you for watching this video, and here is The Midnight Dance of the HiWatt Cabinet. Thank you.